Hi, I'm Adam Summer. You're listening to the Yerushalmi Talk podcast with the support of the Yeshivat Devar Yerushalayim in Har Nof, Jerusalem. This is Sheviis, Chapter 7, Halacha 1. This is the final part of the shiur. Well, if you're following along on the art scroll, we're on 56a1. And the Mishnah stated from what we're covering in the Mishnah today, it says, one should not take vegetables of the field and sell them in the market, but he may pick the vegetables and have his son sell them in his stead. Now, there's a related baraisa, and it says regarding this Mishnah's rule that it was taught in a baraisa, there may not be a partnership arrangement in which 5 people pick vegetables collectively and have one of them sell the jointly owned vegetables. So what is the problem here, and what is the difference? What is the underlying difference between if you have the father having the vegetables and then he gives them to his son to go sell, and then having a partnership of, say, 5 people, and they collectively go and pick the vegetables, and then they give it to one person to go sell? What's the difference? Why is it that the son can go sell the vegetables at the market, but this collective ownership system can't do it? What is the problem? Why is this baraisa needed? This baraisa is trying to show a difference. Okay, in ownership, whenever you have partners, like in a corporation, well, that corporation is one thing. That partnership is it's its own entity. It's its own thing. It's its own company, right? Now, it might have shares, but it's its own entity. And in fact, even the U.S. Supreme Court recently ruled that a corporation is like an individual. It's like a person, which means it's like its own individual entity. So in this case, okay, you have a case where you have 5 people. They go, they pick. One person goes and sells it. Well, the problem is that you have this partnership that's going and doing it, and they all have an interest in it. Okay, so person number 4, person number 5, person number 3 has an interest, and this one person selling it is going to be benefiting the ownership interest of person number 3, 4, 5, 2, and that's a problem. And he's also benefiting himself. Say person number 1 in this 5-person partnership, he's not only benefiting himself, he's also benefiting the others as well. And this is going to be different than the case of a son selling the produce, because if the father picks it, the father owns the interest in it, and the son doesn't own any of the interest in it. The son is just doing his father a favor, but the father owns 100% of the interest in the vegetables. And in this case of the 5 people, and person number 1 is going and selling it, well, person number 1 has an interest in the sale of these vegetables. He actually gets a profit out of it. And in the case of the son selling it on behalf of the father, the son doesn't own any of the vegetables. And so that's going to be the difference there. So as we noted, there may not be a partnership arrangement where you have 5 people picking the vegetables collectively and one of them going to sell it and to sell this jointly owned produce. The Gemara continues, this baraisa continues, says, but if 2 people pick vegetables individually, either one may sell his own vegetables together with his fellows. So that's going to be a little bit different. Okay, the Rosh Hashanah is going to say about this that it is permitted for one of them to sell his fellow's produce, since it is identical with the Mishnah's case of a son selling his father's vegetables. And what this baraisa is trying to teach is that when selling the other fellow's produce, the seller is allowed to include his own produce in the sale. And this permit is based on the principle of inclusion, which states that when the sale of a permitted item takes place, another's item thrown in to the sale is not viewed as having been sold itself, but is ending up getting absorbed by the sale of the primary product. And so as long as the seller initiates the sale with his fellow's produce, he is allowed to include his own produce into the transaction without violating any rules on dealing in Sheviis produce. Now, this concept of inclusion is not it comes up a lot, right? So let's say we have in mixtures, right? Because effectively what we're saying is oh, this basically becomes a mixture. And this is a little bit different than the Mishnah's case, all right? The Mishnah's case is saying, all right, well, the father has all the ownership. Son goes and does a favor and sells it. Okay, fine. Allows it. Partnership, 5 people, right? 5 people go and do it. Each one of the 5 have an economic interest in the collective vegetables, and one person goes and he sells the vegetables, all right? And they're selling this jointly owned produce, and the first person is benefiting, but the other ones are doing as well. Now, what is going to be the difference if you have these 2 people picking the vegetables individually, and then he's selling his own vegetables, and the other one has vegetables that are included in it, okay? So the idea is that, as long as the seller is initiating the sale with his fellow's produce, he's allowed to include his own produce in the transaction. And basically it becomes blended together. And so basically, we could assume it's like half-half, okay? And that's going to be allowed. And the Gemara in this Bryce is going to continue. It's going to say, moreover, 5 brothers may gather vegetables individually and have one of them sell on their behalf. So, again, what this is trying to show out is that they're trying to show that when you have this collective owner interest, okay, there's really 4 cases happening here. One case is where the son has no economic interest in the vegetables whatsoever. He's just doing his father a favor. His father owns all the vegetables, selling the vegetables. That's allowed. Okay, fine. The second case is the case that really is the problematic case. The problematic case is where you have a partnership, okay? 5 people pick the vegetables. They own the vegetables collectively, all right? So inside of this pile, all right, this pile of vegetables, okay, is 1/5 ownership of the vegetables. It's not the same as 2 people coming or even 5 brothers coming, and each one individually owns it, okay? And it's being thrown in to a sale, okay? The problem with the partnership is that when this one person is going and selling it, he has an economic interest in the other guy's vegetables, all right? In person number 4's vegetables in the corporation, he owns part of those vegetables. And each part of that pile of vegetables is co-owned 1/5. Now, in the case of 5 brothers individually picking it, and one brother goes and sells it, okay, brother number 1, who's making the sale, has no economic interest at all in brother number 4's vegetables. He's just going and doing a favor. He's including it into the product, and it's being included as this rule of inclusion. And basically what happens is he's going to give 100% of the money of brother number 4's vegetables to him. And he's going to give 100% of the money of the vegetables collected to brother number 5. But brother number 1 has no economic interest at all in brother number 3, 2, 4, or 5's vegetables. In the case of the corporation, he does, right? Person number 1 owns 1/5 of all the other vegetables. Okay, he owns all of it. He owns part of it. And in this case, there is no ownership of it. So the Gemara is going to talk about this last ruling, which is going to permit one brother to sell the produce for all the other brothers. But again, this is only in a case where they're not going to be partners. They can't be partners. The problem comes about when they are partners, and then it becomes business, and then you're not just doing a small transaction. It actually now becomes like a corporation. It becomes pretty sizable because 5 people can go collect a larger amount of vegetables, and it becomes like a business. So the Gemara continues, says, Rabbi Yossi, the son of Rabbi Bun, said, this is permitted provided that they do not set up the one who sells in the manner of a retailer. So the retailer is a pelter, okay, and that's going to be somebody who's going to buy produce. He's going to get various sources for it, okay, and then what's going to happen is he's going to go and distribute that in the shuk, okay, and the case of this is going to be Sheviis. What's going to be the difference, okay? The prohibition comes from you're not allowed to be doing business, okay? It's not like a one-off sale, like, oh, if I'm selling some olive oil to my neighbor and, I have an extra bottle of olive oil and this Sheviis olive oil and I know he's not going to waste it, am I allowed to sell that one bottle to him because he needs it to light his candles or he needs it for a salad or something like that? Yeah, okay, that's fine. That's not a business. That's not transaction. But in the case of these other instances, okay, where you have a corporation doing it, that's going to be where the sale is really like a form of business. You're going to have a large number of people collecting in aggregate and getting, this large volume out to the marketplace. And, each one of these people have a share in all of the vegetables. And in the case of the five brothers, if they're selling in the way where ordinarily a retailer would be, where he's giving an impression that he's doing business, okay, and it looks like these five brothers are really collecting so much that it's like he's doing business with the produce, that is going to be prohibited, okay? That's going to be prohibited because you're selling it like a retailer. It's really like a business, okay? And so presumably, if you have a father going and collecting and then the son selling, it's not really a business. You can't really collect that much stuff. And in the case of two people and, one goes and sells on behalf of the other, those two people can't really collect a lot, all right? But these five people collecting together, okay, whether it's as a partnership or even brothers, okay, once it becomes a thing where it looks like this is now a regular shuk stand and this is regular business and regular retail shop, well, now you got a problem. Now you're really, forbidden because it's like you've turned it into a business. And, the idea is that, these five people, these five brothers, they're not incorporated. They don't own each other's, share in things. But basically what's happening is they're able to collect such a large volume every day of vegetables that it really, the entire setup really does look like a retail operation. And by setting it up where it looks like a retail operation, that makes this whole practice prohibited. So the Gemara now is going to explain, and it's going to continue. It's going to say, what is the meaning of provided that they do not set up the one who sells in the manner of a retailer? In other words, they're asking, at what level, is it going to look like a retail shop? And it says it means that he should not be accustomed to selling in that location every year. And there are those who wish to say it means that he should not be accustomed to selling in that location constantly during the Sheviis year itself, but he should only sell there occasionally. In other words, if you have a case, like what we were talking about, the five brothers are going out every day and collecting, and you can get five people to collect a pretty large volume every day. And then they go back to the same place in the shuk, in the market, and every day they're there. Every day during the Sheviis year, they're there, okay? And not only that, every seventh year, they're there, okay? They're not going to another location, they're there, all right? That basically is going to be like one who sells in the manner of a retailer, and that's going to be the problem. Now, if you have a one-off case where we went out, today, and no other time, and there was vegetables there, and we picked it, and we went out to go sell it on a one-off thing, and each brother has no economic interest in any of the other brothers' stuff, and everybody picks about the same amount, okay, or even different amounts, but you're selling this amount first, and he gets this money, and then you're selling the second brother's amount, maybe it's a little less, and he's only getting that money and no more. You're not pooling it together, right? And then the other brother maybe has a little bit more than the first and second brother. He's getting all of that money, and it's not getting pooled with the other money, okay? And it's a one-off thing. Well, they're definitely not selling there, consistently. Well, that's going to be a case where it's not like a retailer. Okay. Now, the Gemara is going to talk about another brisa that talks about the sale of vegetables during Sheviis. And it was taught in a brisa, a storekeeper who cooks vegetables and sells them during the Sheviis year should not reckon his fee for the value of the Sheviis vegetables. That basically what it's saying is that he should not designate his fee as a charge for the vegetables himself. And the Gemara says, rather he should reckon his fee for the non-Sheviis wine and the non-Sheviis oil in which he cooks the vegetables, and for the time he spends idling from other work while he cooks the vegetables, okay? So the idea here, says the Pnei Moshe, is that rather than charging him directly for the Sheviis produce, he's employing this principle that comes up again of inclusion, and that's going to be havla'ah, where he's designating his fee as the charge for the non-Sheviis oil and wine, and for the time he spends cooking the vegetables instead of other work. And then he's just throwing in the vegetables, okay? And then that's included, okay? He's not selling the vegetables at all. He's selling his time, and he's selling the other non-Sheviis ingredients to actually make it. And the idea is that one could even look at it in terms of that he's selling his time that he could have been doing other work. Okay, that's another way to look at it. Not that he is not just that he is selling the time that he's cooking it, right? He's actually saying that no. This is actually, I could have been doing this other business that is kosher, and instead of doing that, I cook the vegetables, and I'm selling you for that time. Okay, it's another way to divide it up. And basically, you have a wage that, he's taking a wage for the actual cooking. And, if you're doing it where he's taking a wage for cooking the vegetables that, have Sheviis produce in it, then that could be a problem where it could look like the work is being done where, he's doing business with Sheviis produce, right? But the idea is that he's saying, no, I could have been doing this other work, and instead I did this work and I just threw in the vegetables. They're included. And the idea is that since the work that he's doing is with his own vegetables, and then he gives it to the customer, then in that case, that's going to be allowed, because he's throwing in the vegetables, and it comes up with this inclusion. So you have a couple of cases where inclusion is being talked about here. And we have a related ruling, and the Gemara says, Rabbi La instructed the producers of scalded and fried wheat products, and it said, do not reckon your fee for the Sheviis oil that you use to process the products, but for the non-Sheviis wheat. In other words, when they're telling the merchants, okay, that you're gonna fry this non-Sheviis wheat flour, and you're gonna have to use the Sheviis oil because that's just what's there. Okay, charge them for the non-Sheviis wheat. Don't charge them for the Sheviis oil. Okay, so if you want to take your time in there, and you want to do it like, I could have been earning this, and I could have been doing this work, and I instead was doing this, and I'm charging for my time in this way, and I'm charging for this non-Sheviis wheat to make these confectionaries, right, that I have to fry, but it happens to be that the oil is Sheviis oil, then you're doing it in a way where you're not charging for the Sheviis oil, you're charging for these other things, and you're effectively like throwing in, you're not really doing business with the Sheviis produce, okay? The problem is that if you say, I'm going to do the opposite, I'm going to charge for the Sheviis oil and the wheat and my time to actually make these Sheviis cakes that have Sheviis produce, that becomes problematic, right? Because now you're actually doing business with Sheviis produce. It's actually like a retail shop. Now you have a problem. Now you're a Sheviis merchant, okay? So in the other case, you're saying, I'm charging you for the non-Sheviis wheat. I could have been, building houses, but instead I'm frying these up, and I'm charging you for the time doing that. I'm not charging you for the time to actually make these cakes as Sheviis cakes. I could have been doing this other work, and I'm charging for that time, and I'm charging for the non-Sheviis produce, and I'm including and throwing in the cost of the Sheviis oil in there, okay? And so now you're not a Sheviis merchant. So now we're going to get to the next part of the segment, and now we were talking about in the Mishnah, we're talking about trappers of wild animals and, fowl or fish, and, they're hunting the kosher species. And it happened to be that a non-kosher species gets trapped by them. And it says that they're permitted to sell it. Rabbi Yehuda says in this Mishnah, even one who chanced upon a non-kosher animal or creature or fish or bird while going on his way may take it and sell it. And the Gemara, not the Gemara, but the Mishnah says, and it concludes, it says, provided that he does not, that it does not become his occupation. And then it concludes and says, but the sages forbade this. So the Gemara is going to talk about a parallel dispute between Rabbi Yehuda and the rabbis. That's in another Mishnah. And by the way, one of the greatest things that you can do as somebody who's interested in learning is trying to pay attention where you have seemingly contradictory Mishnahs whenever you're going through the Shas, and trying to make a mental note on resolving these contradictions. And the Gemara in the Shas brings that up a lot. Okay, you have the Mishnahs, and a lot of times the Mishnahs look like they contradict. They don't, right? Part of the point is that you need the Gemara to show the nuances and differences for why these are not contradictory. Okay, and that's part of your learning. That's part of the thing that you should be paying attention to. So this is such a case. We have this over in Sanhedrin 3.5, 24b in the Bavli. And over there in the Mishnah, it says that, these are the ones who are ineligible to serve as judges or witnesses because they engage in illegal activities. And it's going to talk about Sheviis merchants. Okay, so the Mishnah is talking about people who are disqualified as judges or witnesses because they're not doing monetary dealings in the right way. And merchants who are doing business with Sheviis produce is in that list. By the way, you also have in there people who lend money on interest, and gamblers, and people who have a passion for money that's going to basically get them to bend the laws of dealing with money. These are people that can't be trusted as a witness, and it can't be trusted in business. And that's the commentary by Rashi in Sanhedrin 24b on why it's problematic. Okay, so somebody who's really interested in doing business with Sheviis produce and really turning it into a business, not just a one-off thing. This is a person who has so much desire for money that they're going to bend the rules on how they're dealing with things to acquire this money. Okay, and they can't be trusted. Okay, there's a defect. Okay, so about this, Rabbi Yehuda said, when is a Sheviis merchant ineligible to adjudicate or testify? Now, okay, so over here, okay, we're talking about Rabbi Yehuda as talking about Sheviis merchants because we're in Sheviis, and over there in Bavli, this is going to be talking about Rabbi Yehuda when he's asking about somebody who's going to be a gambler. And very fitting that we're now talking about a Sheviis merchant. So Rabbi Yehuda said, when is a Sheviis merchant ineligible to adjudicate or testify? And it says only when he has no occupation besides this. But if he has an occupation besides this, he is fit to adjudicate or testify. Now, this is something I always wondered about, and I want to clarify it. So it can look like, oh, what do you mean? It's like somebody who is only his only occupation is this. That means that he's only selling in the shuk once every 7 years. That's not what it means. Okay, what it really means is it's really saying during the entire 7th year, not every 7 years, but during the entire 7th year, he's doing business with Sheviis produce. That is his business. It's not a case of, he doesn't do anything for 6 years, and in the 7th year, he goes and he gouges everybody with Sheviis produce, and he makes all the money he can make for the 6th year, and then he waits. No, that's not what it means. What it means is somebody who's coming along and he's making this his occupation and business, okay? This is not talking about a case of two brothers that on a one-off thing go and they pick some vegetables and they sell it in the market, okay? It's not a one-off thing. This is a case that's more like 5 brothers who every day are going and picking vegetables, and they're going out to the shuk, to the same place in the shuk, and they've set up a stand, and they're selling every day. And when you come back on day number 2 or day number 3, there's all sorts of new vegetables that are there because they're going and they're basically turning it into a business. This is what they do all day. They go and they pick vegetables all day, and then they go and they sell it in the market all day. Okay, that has basically, been a case where they've left their old business, they've left their old work, and they realize, okay, Sheviis can have shortages of food, and I'm going to go profit off of it. And now this is what I'm doing for my work. That's really what it's talking about. And this is where he is, not fit to testify or to be a judge. Okay, I just want to give that clarification. So the Gemara is going to record a brisa that's going to elaborate on Rabbi Yudah's statement. And it's going to say, what is the practical definition of having another occupation? So when you're saying having another occupation, what does that actually mean? And the Gemara says, if one sits idle from his work all the other years of the 7th Sheviis cycle, and once Sheviis came, he began extending his hand and dealing in illegal produce, and Sheviis produce, then if he has other work in which he is occupied in Sheviis together with his Sheviis dealings, he is fit to adjudicate and fit to testify. But if not, he is unfit. So the Rosh Hashanah is saying that Rabbi Yudah is holding that if a person has another job during the Sheviis dealing, Sheviis produce, this does not disqualify him from being a judge or from being a witness, because his illegal activity is dismissed as an aberration. The only problem comes is, says Rosh Hashanah, is when he occupies himself only with dealing in Sheviis produce, and that is going to designate him as an untrustworthy person. Okay, so the Gemara is going to continue, and it's going to say, however, if he sat and occupied himself with his work all the other years of the Sheviis cycle, and once Sheviis came, he began extending his hand and dealing in illegal produce, then even if he has no other work with which he is occupied in Sheviis, together with his Sheviis dealings, he is fit to adjudicate and testify. So over here we see, says the Rosh Hashanah, that although he is presently engaged in dealing only with Sheviis produce, this is not his only trade, because he engages in other work during the other years of the Sheviis cycle, and he remains eligible to serve as a judge or witness. The assumption here is that he is not an inherent sinner who we have to suspect of being dishonest in other matters of halacha as well, and he's basically honest, but he's using this to keep himself occupied in Sheviis. So Rabbi Yudah is holding that one who has no work whatsoever other than dealing in Sheviis produce is considered a Sheviis merchant, and somebody who has any other work during the Sheviis itself or during the Sheviis years of the Sheviis cycle remains fit to serve as a judge or witness. So I want to point out the Rosh who's talking about this, and he's saying that about this, that it brings up a question: why is it that this should be permitted when the prohibition against doing business with Sheviis produce is derived from Scripture, and Scripture does not exclude one who has another occupation. So other commentators are explaining that Rabbi Yehuda actually means here that it is one who has another occupation and he chances upon some Sheviis produce and is permitted to sell it, because selling something that one merely chanced upon is not defined as doing business. And Rabbi Yehuda is basically saying that if somebody comes along here in this Mishnah and they chanced upon a non-kosher creature while they're going on their way, they're allowed to sell it. This is not their business. And here he's saying the same thing on a Sheviis produce. So again, we're comparing this Mishnah with this other Mishnah in Sanhedrin about doing business. So what's the difference in this Mishnah that you happen to cross or you happen to just trap a non-kosher animal and you're selling it as a one-off thing? Are you allowed to do it? You are allowed to do it. You can't sell it to a Jew. You can sell it to a Kuthi and you can sell it to a non-Jew. But that's not your main trade. That's not your main business, okay? And so over here, this is going to basically be where, it's like you've chanced upon this Sheviis produce and you're selling it as a one-off thing. It's not your business. That's what the Rosh was actually trying to point out here as a explanation of it. And, the rabbis in this Mishnah who are disputing Rabbi Yehuda in regard to the sale of non-kosher animals are also disputing him with regards to selling Sheviis produce. And they're going to consider the sale prohibited even when one has another occupation and he chanced upon the prohibited item. And they're going to concede that the seller is not disqualified from adjudicating or testimony if he has another occupation. So again, keep in mind that over there in Sanhedrin, this was disputed, okay? And so, the question is going to be, it looks like Rabbi Yehuda is actually going to be more makel here. And it looks like the sages are actually going to be a little bit more strict on this. So we're trying to understand Rabbi Yehuda's point, okay? Because Rabbi Yehuda's point over here in Sheviis and over there is also going to be the same. In other words, Rabbi Yehuda's deeper point is that this guy has another occupation. In both cases, he has another occupation. His other occupation is that he's a trapper of kosher animals. And he happened upon a non-kosher thing. But that's not really what he's doing for work. He's trying to really sell the kosher animals. Okay. And over here, okay, this other guy, he's not inherently dishonest. Okay. Either he happened upon Sheviis produce, or he had a lapse in judgment, and he has another business, but on the side he's selling some Sheviis produce. Okay, and in the same case, that's not his main occupation. His main occupation is something else, and that's going to be what we pay attention to. Now, again, I want to point out that the sages, sages forbid this. Okay, so in the case of trapping the wild animals, Rabbi Yehuda is saying that, provided it does not become his occupation. In other words, he doesn't start setting up and trying to trap, non-kosher species and sell them and then do it as a business. And over here, in this Mishnah, the sages are forbidding this. Okay. And they're saying that, the question is, is this person going to be ineligible to also be a judge or a witness? So the Gemara is going to rule on this. And Rabbi Ba Bar Zavda says in the name of Rabbi Bahu, who says in the name of Rabbi Lazar, the halacha accords with Rabbi Yehuda of our Mishnah. So the Vilna Goan makes a point of this. He says that this does not accord with the rabbis who dispute him. And that's a very big chiddush. Now I want to go through some of the points of the Vilna Goan. Okay, the Vilna Goan ends up with this approach, and he's noting that it's certainly not. He's saying while it is certainly necessary for Rabbi Ba to inform us the halacha follows Rabbi Yehuda as opposed to the rabbis, it seems extra for him to specify Rabbi Yehuda of our Mishnah. So the Mara Fulda is going to adjust the text to make the text parallel with the Yerushalmi Sanhedrin 3:5, which says that the halacha accords with Rabbi Yudah of the Brisa. And basically what Rabbi Ba is trying to specify is that he means to rule in accordance with the Brisa's interpretation of Rabbi Yudah's opinion. Okay, so that's going to be the idea. Now the Gemara is going to comment. Rabbi Ba bar Zavda was acclaimed for his modesty in having related a teaching in the name of one who was his junior. So Rabbi Ba bar Zavda was actually a student of Rav Ada bar Ahava, who was a contemporary of Rav. And so Rabbi Ba followed Rav by one generation. Rabbi Abahu, who was a student of Rabbi Elazar, who was quoting, was a disciple of Rav's junior contemporary, Rabbi Yochanan. So basically that's being very modest. So Rabbi Abahu is following Rav by two generations. And, he's going to be, Rabbi Bahu is going to be a generation after Rabbi Ba. And Rabbi Ba is actually going to have seniority, but he actually goes ahead and teaches this ruling in accordance with Rabbi Abahu, which is very modest. So the Gemara is going to quote a brisa that's going to present Rabbi Yudah's opinion a little bit differently. And there's another brisa that teaches the opinion of Rabbi Yudah more stringently. So this, by the way, so far has been a case where Rabbi Yudah was actually quite makel about this. The sages were more strict. And now we're going to have another brisa where the opinion of Rabbi Yudah is going to be more strict. And so the Gemara says, what is the practical definition of having another occupation? And so this now is going to come up with and by the way, this is interconnected, and this does not, contradict, but it's over there in Sanhedrin and over here, very, very connected. So this is helping us understand over there, what is going to be the case of a Sheviis merchant or somebody who's a gambler or somebody who is, doing illegal business. And over here, we're learning about somebody who's doing, Sheviis or, trapping animals that are non-kosher and then trying to maybe do business with it. So the Brisa says that if one sat and occupied himself with his work all the other years of the Sheviis cycle, and in the Sheviis year he began extending his hand to deal in illegal produce, then if he has other work with which he is occupied in Sheviis together with his Sheviis dealings, he is fit to adjudicate or testify. So this is a case where during 6 years, he has another job. Let's say he's a carpenter. And now the 7th year comes along, he starts selling Sheviis produce, but he still keeps his carpenter job, okay? That's basically going to be a case where, yes, he is dealing in illegal produce. It's been set up as a business, okay? But he's also doing his other job. So now the question is, can he be a witness? Can he serve, as like a judge where, you want to go and annul oaths? Is he going to be allowed to, be one of 3 men who can go, when you want to go annul oaths? So the idea is that he's fit to adjudicate or testify. But the Gemara says, if he is not engaged with any other work during the Sheviis year, he is unfit. So everybody agrees that he's dealing in illegal produce. But now if he totally stopped his carpenter job in the 7th year, and now this is all that he's doing is he's dealing in the Sheviis produce, he's basically now deemed to be unfit. He's basically so into money. And he's basically, it's not just like a temptation thing. He's thrown the halacha out of the window, okay? He's deemed to be immoral. He's an immoral person. And so this kind of person is not allowed to be a judge. He's not allowed to testify. He's not a kosher witness. So the Gemara says, however, if he was not occupied with his work all the other years of the Sheviis cycle, and once Sheviis came, he began extending his hand and dealing with Sheviis produce, then even if he has other work with which he is occupied in Sheviis together with his Sheviis dealings, he is unfit. So this is going to be the third case. What if he does nothing for 6 years? And then in the 7th year, he decides to do another job, like to be a carpenter, and he's also selling Sheviis merchant. He's also selling Sheviis produce. Well, basically, he's unfit. And the idea, says the Vilna Goan here, is that since the person did not engage in any work during the other years of the Sheviis cycle, we assume that his main occupation is dealing in Sheviis produce, which he could not do during the other years. And he's using the other occupation during Sheviis really as a trick, as a ruse, in order to cover for it. And so the idea is that really his main thing is Sheviis, dealing in Sheviis produce, and he waits around for 6 years, does nothing, and then he pretends to be a carpenter for a little bit. And according to this Baraisa, says Rosh Trilio, when a person deals in Sheviis produce, Rabbi Yehuda considers him fit for testimony or adjudication only if he has another occupation both in Sheviis and the other years of the cycle. And according to the previous Baraisa, however, Rabbi Yehuda considers him fit if he has another occupation either in Sheviis or in the other years of the cycle. So the Gemara is going to comment about this, and it's going to say that it was not regarding this Baraisa's stringent version of Rabbi Yehuda's statement that Rabbi Bar Zavda says in the name of Rabbi Bahu, in the name of Rabbi Lazar, that the halacha accords to Rabbi Yehuda of our Mishnah, and that Rabbi Bar Zavda was acclaimed for his modesty in having related a teaching in the name of one who is his junior. So actually what this is saying, and this is going by the version of the Marafulda on it, but I want to bring up the Vilna Gaon's text. Really what this is saying is that regarding this previous lenient version of Rabbi Yehuda's opinion, that's the idea, okay? But the Vilna Gaon doesn't hold that, okay? Vilna Gaon is maintaining that the initial lenient interpretation of Rabbi Yehuda's opinion is not cited from a Brisa, but from the Gemara's own interpretation of his opinion. And that interpretation, that Rabbi Yehuda permits dealing in Sheviis produce if one has other work, either in other years or in Sheviis. And that's going to be based on the implication that Rabbi Yehuda's words in the Mishnah and Sanhedrin. And so, since Rabbi Yehuda states that one who deals in Sheviis produce is disqualified only if he has no occupation besides this, the Gemara is going to infer that if he has any other occupation, either in the Sheviis or the other years, he is still fit to adjudicate or testify. Now, Rabbi Yehuda's opinion is going to be more strict over here, and that's going to mean that the Brisa disagrees with the Mishnah. So according to the Vilna Gaon, the two versions of Rabbi Yehuda's opinion, a lenient one based on the implication of the Mishnah and a stringent one based on the Brisa, basically the Gemara is quoting Rabbi Ba's ruling that the halacha accords with Rabbi Yehuda of the Mishnah, which is the more lenient opinion. Okay, that's what this is trying to say. What this is trying to say is that the halacha doesn't go by Rabbi Yehuda in the Brisa. The halacha goes by Rabbi Yehuda in the Mishnah. And the Mishnah is much more lenient than this Brisa. This Brisa is not so lenient. So that's going to be the idea. The Rosh is going to have this a little bit different. He's going to be explaining that the first Brisa, dealing with Rabbi Yehuda's ruling in Sanhedrin, that somebody becomes disqualified as a Sheviis merchant only when he has no other occupation. And the Baraisa, is going to explain that this applies when he has no other trade whatsoever. And that's also going to be in Sheviis or in other years. So the second Baraisa is going to allow Rabbi Yehuda's ruling in our Mishnah and explain that his permit to deal in Sheviis produce when one chances upon it, and he's chancing upon this produce, and that's going to apply when one has another occupation, not only in the Sheviis year but also in the other years. Okay, so the Rosh is pointing out that you have to have the other work as well, and it's like you've chanced upon it. You didn't actually go out to find it; you chanced upon it, and it's not really like your business. And the Chazan Ish is saying about this that if one has another occupation in the other years, he is permitted to deal in Sheviis produce, even if he has no other occupation in Sheviis itself. And the later Brisa, according to the Chazan Ish, is saying that the person has to have another occupation in Sheviis as well. So although the two Brisas speak primarily about different matters, there is a point of disagreement between them. So the Mishnah and Gemara is going to finish up, and in our Mishnah, the Tanakama are ruling that if a trapper who's hunting for kosher creatures chances upon a non-kosher creature, he's permitted to sell it. And Rabbi Yehuda ruled that the same applies to a layman, a not-professional trapper, who chances upon a non-kosher creature going his way, and he traps it and he sells it. So the Gemara is wondering, why is the Tanakama trying to limit it just to trappers? And why is it that Rabbi Yehuda now is going to say, no, not just trappers, even for a regular person whose job is not to be a trapper? Why is that? What's the nuance here? This is a Hiddush, right? So since it's permitted for trappers to sell non-kosher creatures that they chance upon, okay, fine. So the Gemara says, let the same apply here to the layman as well. And the Gemara is going to respond to that. What's the issue? So Rabbi Yosef, son of Rabbi Bun, says, there, with respect to laymen, the government does not oppress them with taxes, so there's no reason to be lenient with them and let them sell any non-kosher creatures. However, with respect to the professional trappers, the government oppresses them with a heavy tax burden. And so there's a reason to be lenient with them and let them sell the non-kosher creatures that they happen to come upon on their way. And so, in other words, what they're saying is, because the government is imposing a heavy tax burden on the trappers. In other words, they're recorded, they know who they are, and they know to come and collect tax from them. And because they're very exact about collecting their taxes from these guys, they say, okay, you can be lenient in this case. But why give a leniency over to a layperson who, this is not his business? Okay, he doesn't have to pay tax on it. So in that case, they basically say that there's no permit to let the layperson do it, and that's going to be the idea. So this is going to basically follow the approach by the Rosh, which you can see in his commentary in the Mishnah. So the question is, also, with respect to trapping, the government does not oppress the trappers with a heavy tax burden. So if the government does not, put a heavy tax burden on the trappers, then it should also be that there's no imperative to rule leniently for them as well. So because, you have this heavy tax burden on them, you're allowed to be lenient. But it looks like if there was no tax burden at all on the trappers, you wouldn't be allowed to be lenient with them either. So have a great day, and we will continue with Halacha 2 tomorrow.